inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me once again this wonderful Tuesday. I am your host, Louise H. Reed, with listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts. I'm the fortunate host here live every Tuesday to talk life and leadership with everyday people doing extraordinary things. People like my guest today who take brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals, and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. There is nothing more valuable than time. So as a way of showing my gratitude to you for listening each and every week, all who comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty will be automatically entered into a prize draw to win exclusive Lady Boss Loyalty swag. I know I mentioned this last time. I have 2 limited edition prizes left. So if you want your hands on one of those, please comment away and good luck. So without further ado, let's jump on into today's amazing guest. And I'll start, as always, by giving you a little intro into Sophie. So today we have with us Sophie Sherwin. Sophie is the founder of Sophfree, is a Defiance Coach, and soon to be author. She teaches visionaries who have had enough of being silenced by fear and limiting beliefs to fuck conformity. So warning, there may be swearing in this episode. If it's not your jam, you might want to choose one of my other recordings. Sophie does not use systems or steps as one size does not fit all. Her method is simple. You talk, she listens, and you figure out your needs and go for it. She works with human design, psychology, her own uniqueness, and her intuition. Part of her journey is that she is writing an inspiring true story about bravery, believing in yourself, friendship, adventure, achieving dreams, living in the moment, and travel. And that sounds really exciting. We'll be jumping on into that for sure on our interview. Finally, Sophie has found herself traveling around the US on buses with only a few dollars in her pocket and far too much luggage to follow in the footsteps of her mom, who is her hero. Sophie, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning from a very grotty motel here in California, but it's all good.
I love it. I wanted just to share, if we can, a few chuckles that we had just moments before the show started. You know, my regular listeners know that I say often life is live, and that's part of the reason why one of the many reasons why I love doing a live show, because kind of whatever happens, this is life, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to roll with what happens. So can you just share a little bit about with our audience what it was like just getting ready for the camera angles ready for the show? And I'm specifically interested in your descriptions of the walls around you.
Oh yes. Well, we might hear a few thuds from upstairs, which I'm sure last night somebody was actually physically being killed. But no police have turned up this morning yet, so we'll be interested in that. But yeah, so this morning we were trying to figure out the lighting because the lighting is quite poor here in this room, and we have a choice of wall color. We either have blood or vomit. We started off with the blood, but you couldn't see me. I was sort of silhouetted like a murder victim. So we now have vomit behind us. So apologies for everybody watching this. And this is not my choice of decor. Although saying that, I don't know, you get quite used to it after a while.
There we go. And so I think this gives some insight to those listening who enjoy the British humor. I'm looking forward to this, being of British, descent, having lived there only for 5 years. I'm looking forward to jumping on into this. So Sophie, one of the things I can start with, what the heck is a Defiance Coach? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, sure. It's basically somebody who is, I don't like conforming. I have, over the last couple of years, basically, when I embarked on my entrepreneurial ship, journey, I've noticed that these sales and marketing strategies are all about conforming and all about sort of following the trend, you know, and it's all the same, but just wrapped up in a different bow. And I'm coming along and I'm going, listen, you know, number one, as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest lessons that we have to do is follow our guts. Don't follow the crowd. And that one size doesn't fit all. You know, what if we really don't like what is being taught to us by these business coaches? And so basically it is to allow people the confidence to stand up and say, no, I don't, you know, that's just not me. It's, and my method is not for everybody. I mean, yeah, there is a lot of swearing going on. And it's not, and I get it, because people say, yes, I'm a visionary. But when you actually get down to it, they're not. They're just, you know, they're just sort of following the crowd like everybody else. But it's just basically that often people who really do think out of the box are silenced by fear or limiting beliefs. You know, we are kept very safe in this world by keeping and conforming, which is all fine. But they're not the people I want to work with.
Mm-hmm. Interesting description. And it's funny you say, you know, it's all fine. I find that it's all fine until one day it's not.
It's yes, very true. But then, you know, we would look at what's happened, that it suddenly is not. It's not for the faint-hearted at all. But I've certainly come up against everything. Is it walk the talk or talk the walk? I can't remember. Talk the talk or walk the walk or whatever. I've done it all. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I've drunk far too much wine, eaten far too much chocolates and Ben and Jerry's, cried too many tears, you know, beaten the shit out of my bed with my tennis racket far too many times, because it's got, you know, really uncomfortable. But the growth is just incredible. And I'm slowly meeting more people like me, which is great.
I have to pause for a moment before we start rewinding the clock, which I really like to do at the beginning of the show, is to get more understanding of what your journey has been like and how you got to where you are. Have you ever read a series of books? I can't even remember the series of books, but it's a British book, and the main character is Rebecca Bloomwood. No, you'd know.
Oh, okay.
And if my sister is listening now, Lucy, I'm asking you to text me the name of these books, because you remind me exactly of this character. And so I'm killing myself here.
Oh, fantastic.
Anyway, I'll have to follow you that later. And so going back more to why we're here, I'd like you to rewind the clock a little bit, because clearly 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old Sophie wasn't saying what you're saying now. You've grown in, obviously, to the woman that you are. Rewind the clock a bit for us and tell us about, you know, 6-year-old Sophie. What did you want to be when you grew up? And then let's start taking what came next.
Sure, yes. I mean, I guess, you know, one of the biggest parts of my life of who I am today was that before my father died, he suddenly died in a plane crash. And so my mum was left with 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. Luckily, I was a lifesaver, clearly. And a very successful business. She owned a small business. At that point, for some reason, as a 4-year-old girl, number one is that I thought that my dad's death was my fault. If I had been more good, if I had been better, if I'd been more lovable, he wouldn't have died. As an adult, it's completely incomprehensible to think that a child could think like that. But children, if things happen, what we try and do is we try and control it by making it our fault, because then we can control something. I mean, obviously I couldn't control that he had died, but I that's just the way that I could make sense of it at the time. And so because of that, I started a whole journey of self-loathing and self-punishment. But also, I decided that I would become invisible. I wouldn't have any needs, any emotions. I would just be the good girl. I would look after my younger brother and allow my mum to look after my 2 older brothers. And so at that point, my voice was silenced. I didn't want to upset anybody. I didn't want to be any, I just didn't need it. I just didn't want attention, although I craved it as well. I wanted somebody to pick me up and say, are you okay? What's going on with you? But I never did. And being the good, perfect girl, as I say, that, you know, my voice, we're a little bit like the Little Mermaid, Ariel. I gave away my voice. And sort of, but I would do things that, I mean, at school I was always quite quirky. I was, you know, I used humor a lot, and I was always in trouble. I was always supposedly talking back to people. I didn't think I was, but apparently I was. They thought I was. I just think they just didn't get our British humor.
I think you're onto something there.
Yeah. It's quite interesting being here in the States with, as you probably know, that, you know, with our humor, so, and then slowly, I was eating my emotions away as well. That's how and anytime, you know, I wanted to speak out, I ate away instead. I ate my voice, and that's where my weight journey started as well. But I just wanted to be as invisible as possible. But slowly but surely, I've found a voice through my last job, especially, but also this being an entrepreneur, you've got to find a voice, otherwise you're not going to succeed. You know, you've got it. You really do.
So can I pause here for a moment, if you don't mind, Sophie? So first of all, I'm, you know, obviously terribly sorry to hear that that was part of your journey at such a young age, and really a pivotal one at that, right? A very defining moment that changed the trajectory of your life, no doubt the life of your siblings and your mother as well. So thank you for being so open and sharing that. When did you, or how did you become aware of the fact that you had silenced your voice? Because clearly you didn't know you were doing that then. You know, when we have the awareness, it's at a point, something happens that we then sit and reflect back on that. So the reason I'm asking this is because I think these are really important moments for my listeners to have some insight into, so that they can reflect on their own, you know, on their own journey or their own path.
Sure, yes. I mean, it's been really quite recent that it's come into my awareness, but it's been coming in, me not knowing. And what I've done is, a lot of the time that when it has come in, I have then punished myself for speaking out, or, and this is where, you know, part of my psychology comes in, is that I very rarely listen to what people say. We say what we think is the best thing to say in the moment, or to please other people, or to please ourselves, whatever. But when you watch somebody's behavior, that is their true soul speaking. That is what they want, and that's their alignment. And my behavior didn't sync with my voice being silenced. So I was, I mean, just simple thing, you know, like the way I dress, you know, I mean, you know, that there is, I kind of conform, but I kind of don't. And just other things as well. I mean, certainly the lifestyle that I'm living, that I found myself living now, is not for the faint-hearted. So
now that you brought that into the mix, tell us a little bit about that. Where you've sort of come from and where you are now, sort of like the before and the after. Yeah.
Well, so 3 years ago, I was working as a personal assistant, and I had been doing for 10 years. very well paid job. You know, I had a flat in Battersea in London. You know, it was going equity. And then one day I quit. I walked into his office and I said, listen, that's it. I sold my flat and booked a one-way ticket to Vancouver. And what had happened was that I came to the realization that my whole life was my work, my job, and that's how I got my identity, my safety, and that's just basically who I was. I was so dependent on my job. It was unhealthy, and I was physically burnt out, and spiritually and emotionally getting burnt out as well. So yeah, I decided just to get up and go. And my boss turned around and said, well, you know, do you have a job? I said, no. Do you have any friends? No. Do you know where you're going to live? No. But I needed to get out of London. So he goes, well, I'll offer you a job. I'll offer you to open an office in Monaco. So off I went to Monaco. I kind of thought, well, the universe is taking me there. So I went to Monaco, spent a year and a half there, fell in love with a Croatian. So I ended the job in Monaco, and so moved to Croatia. 3 weeks in, he decided that, yeah, it wasn't for him. So I Googled in panic, where shall I live? And Vienna came up. So I moved to Vienna. Vienna and I didn't really have a good relationship. So I moved back to the south of France, spent a few months there, but then I went back to Vienna again, and I really had to leave. I'd subletted my flat and I had to leave. So I put all my stuff in storage. I've sold a lot of stuff, and bought a ticket to LA, and that's it. That's all I knew. I just bought a ticket to LA. Somebody very kindly offered me a landing pad, so I stayed there for a couple of weeks. And then after, I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, I found myself traveling around the US now, following in my mum's footsteps, who hitchhiked and backpacked back in 1958 from Canada down to Mexico. And so I'm following in her footsteps, and following every place she's visiting. So I literally have 50 kilos worth of luggage. So I'm not a backpacker. I am doing this on a budget, hence I'm in a vomit-inducing motel, and living off bread and dip, because that's the only thing you can, you know, I mean, it's just amazing how self-sufficient I'm back in the Girl Guides again. Yeah.
Be prepared, right?
Exactly.
That's also be prepared.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm listening to you share this, and I've got all sorts of mixed emotions all happening simultaneously occurring, right? It's like
sadness, bravery. I'm not sure which one it is yet.
Right, yeah. And so these won't be unusual things that you have heard from others. What is it in you? What's that fire in you that has lit the desire to then deal with the hardships that come?
It's the fact that I want to. I've always been as authentic as possible, but I've also been a real, as I say, a people pleaser who basically didn't have a voice. And the only way that I can really be authentic and have a voice is to heal myself and to really face the demons of the past, and realize that my past doesn't serve me anymore. I mean, yes, it protected me at the time. It's my best friend, and got me through really tough times. Because I actually delayed my grief and didn't start grieving my dad until I was older, and so I had to go through that, and take away my huge comfort of eating,
So how did you do? So maybe I think that's both things that you talked about are really quite common, I think, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so how did you come to realize that? And then what were the steps then that you took generally, because I know it's not easy, that you took that started you on the path to shedding that and keeping that off?
Yes, I mean, I have a very pivotal moment in my life where I really did tackle my weight, which was, I found myself in a very, very abusive relationship with an absolute fuckwit. I mean, he was a sociopath. He really was. And I kept trying to break up with him, and he kept hooking me back in. And the reason why, I stayed with him is that that's all I thought I deserved. My weight was creeping up. And I was walking down the road one day, and I heard this sound, and I sort of looked over, and there was this guy on the phone, and he was on his mobile, and I think he must have been on the phone to somebody he loved, and he was cursing her out, he was swearing, he was calling her all sorts of really despicable names, and it was almost like, Thor had sent me a lightning bolt and basically said, this is your future if you stay with who you are, with this guy. And and I really wanted to pick up a rock and throw it at him, but unfortunately my aim is not good, so I don't know what kind of damage I would have done if I had done it. So instead I decided to go back, and I actually that night lost 250 pounds because I got rid of him. And I started, so I signed up for a weight loss diet, which was actually, it's a 500 calorie a day diet. I mean, it really is so unhealthy, but it got my weight off, and I went from over 300 pounds down to under 140 in 4 months. It was so unhealthy, but it, as I say, it got the weight off. But when I thought, my life would become a Disney movie. I thought my prince.
And not Ariel this time.
Well, no, that's it. With the beautiful singing voice,
Cool.
Snow White. No, not Snow White. Cinderella. Anyway, one of the ones with a good ending. But it didn't happen. I couldn't figure out really why was my life not perfect. Now I was at my ideal weight. I had floppy skin, I still had cellulite, I had things flapping and clapping that shouldn't have been. I was never alone. I realized that I really have to work on who I am, because whatever shape, size, color I am, it really is, I have to heal the inside. Excuse me. So that's where the journey has really, really started. Before then, it was I certainly did a lot of stuff, but that was one of the biggest pivotal moments.
I love how honest you are, and I know I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again, and I probably will say it again before the show is done. I absolutely love your humor, and it does sound like you have used humor to navigate through the hardships of life. I know my mum said growing up, well, if you can't laugh, you'll cry. But you really have a way of integrating that so well. Has that been part of your healing?
Oh, for sure. Yes, it has. And I love your mum. It sounds like we would sit down with a very large glass of wine and have a few giggles. And my mum was very much like that too. She used humor as well. I am very aware that sometimes I use it when I'm uncomfortable, and it's quite a good indicator as well for me to say, check in with yourself, something's going on. But I really love making people laugh, and I try and do that. So yes, it's yeah.
So when you came to this realization that, or you lost all of that weight and realized you had to start healing in the inside, you know, I love the quote, happiness is an inside job. I know it's like, okay, well, yes, duh. But for some people, that in and of itself is a revelation. And then it becomes that, so how do I do that? And I know that's one of the things really that you're focused on when you're coaching clients. How did you start that journey yourself on healing the inside? Because it's not easy.
It's not, no. I mean, one of the biggest things for me, because as I say that, you know, when Dad died, one of the biggest messages I got was be strong for everybody else, you know, and as I say, don't have needs or emotions. And so asking for help for me is just huge. I mean, even now today, I struggle with it. Um, so that's one of the biggest things. But I think for me, what I've done is that I have sort of had a huge mixing bowl, and you know, I've had such a thirst for knowledge of self-discovery, and I've kind of put it all in the mixing bowl, sort of stirred it and come up with nothing. I mean, it's just, you know, and this is where I say one size does not fit all. You know, I mean, you know, people have these amazing sort of ways, methods, you know, blah, blah, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody, because we have our own stories. So what I certainly do is I pick and choose what is right for me, and when it's right for me, it feels good, and I will go along with it. Otherwise, I will just struggle and just rebel against it. I love the fact that I'm a rebel with a cause. You know, that's what I call myself.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. So how did you get started in business then? So I mean, obviously it sounds like this, all of what you've shared so far all contributed to that, right? And you put it in a mixing bag and here we are. But then that's one thing to have done that. It's quite another to then start the fucking business, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes, for sure. It's not for the lighthearted, this.
It's not.
It's not.
Talk about that, because I know a lot of my listeners either just started a business or sort of sitting on the fence, or, you know, so talk us a little bit about how that was for you, because that's not a one size fits all thing either.
Certainly not. No, I started just under 2 years ago, and I've changed directions so many times. I mean, I think I even well, I tried my hand at acting at one point. I mean, I've been a scientist, I've been an astronaut. I mean, on my journey of entrepreneurship, it was the fact that I left Monaco and left my job, and I was very fortunate. I had a lot of my investment from my flat in London had given me some money, so I thought I actually looked at being a health coach, and that's actually when I was in Monaco, I trained to be a health coach, and that's what I really wanted to do. So I wanted freedom. I mean, that's the one thing that I found myself. I love to travel, as I'm sure your listeners and you have gathered that by now. Usually it's more 5-star instead of 1-star, but hey, you know, we've got to start somewhere. And when I was a PA, I basically couldn't take holiday unless my boss said it was okay. And if he changed his plans at the last minute, I had to change mine. And if he was in London, I had to be in London. So I could never commit to going away and everything. And so that's where I thought I really want freedom. And that's where Sophfree comes in, actually, because it's just basically about getting free from whatever that is. You know, freedom is you know, completely unique to us. So that's where I've decided to be on, you know, go on the entrepreneurial road. And this is where it kind of has sort of twisted and turned like a, you know, like a tornado, and spat me out the other side. And being here today chatting to you, on the most incredible journey. I mean, I've fit in so much in the last 18 months. And who knew I'd be on the journey I'm on? I mean, it's so special. But I also am a person that sort of thinks that when we really think about embarking on the entrepreneurial journey, do not under any circumstances listen to all these Facebook ads about, you know, being able to have 50,000, you know, clients in a month if you sign up to their coaching program and all this great. It's such smoke and mirrors out there. It really is. And this is where I said very, very early on is that trust your gut, but also be realistic as well. I mean, you know, if you're giving up a really good job because you posted one photograph on Instagram and you got, you know, 50 likes, doesn't automatically think that you should become a photographer. You know, I mean, you know, you've really got to, it's not for the faint-hearted, the entrepreneurial route. It's very,
I think that's I love what you said. I think, you know, I bought into that whole notion earlier on, and I'm really thankful for it because I learned a lot from it. I learned the smoke and mirrors piece, but I still took a lot away from that. But I think that needs to be talked about a little more openly, because I do hear and see, especially on the platform I'm on a lot, LinkedIn, a lot of people who are trying to go this route and burn out. And they're wondering why, and it's not working out the way that they had thought. Well, I feel for them. It's that smoke and mirrors and that unrealistic idea about what the industry is. So you talked a little bit about a lot, both explicitly and then just even through the journey that you've shared, that freedom is a really important piece for you, and then freedom looks differently for everyone. What is if I expand that a bit more, what does a good life look like for you?
For me, it's being, I really want to inspire people, and if I can just inspire one person, then my job's done almost. But I really actually want to reach as many people as I can, and inspire people to really believe in themselves, and to follow your dreams. You know, although there are kind of limitations, of course. You know, I've heard these horror stories of these business coaches that basically say for people to get into debt to start, you know, to take on their coaching business, to start a business. So, and that's what I'm saying about, you know, get real, you know, and so there are limitations, but they should never be within. They should, you know, it should never, you should never put limitations on yourself. So I really want to, yeah, as I say, just to really inspire people, and also this is through the book that I'm writing as well, and to think out of the box and to be confident to think and act out of the box. That kind of thinking is what we need more now than ever, and I completely support that. And so that's, I mean, that's basically all in a nutshell, what I really want to do. I mean, the thing is it's very difficult to say it without sounding like with the coach speech, you know. I mean, you know, we're so conditioned to it all, you know. I mean, I mean, it's just basically, I think you used this word when we first met, you know, to just live a badass life, and a life you want to live, not a life full of expectations of other people or even of yourself, you know, so it's just having that confidence to do it.
It is. I love how you said, I want to reiterate it because I thought it was really powerful. I'm sorry, I think I'm paraphrasing here, but you said there are always limitations, let them not be within. And I thought that was really, really powerful and was worthy of emphasizing. I also liked what you were talking about, like now more than ever is the time to lean into the nonconformist in you, Sophie, and me, and you, the listener.
Yeah.
I completely agree. All around the world, that's becoming more and more apparent. And the impacts of us conforming too much, we're seeing global impacts now. It's becoming more important. And so I liked that. I just wanted to really emphasize that, and wonder myself, how can I, in my own way, how can I stand up? How can I be a nonconformist in a way that is uncomfortable, but not totally out of my realm, right? That's a little step. Some people can just quit their job and move to Monaco, naming no one in particular. And some people, they can't do that for whatever reason. They can't do that. They can do something though.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, that's why I'm, the external limitations. I mean, because, when we think about being an entrepreneur, we also think about that. Yeah. I mean, as I say, I mean, I'm very dramatic as well. I don't do things by half. I really do go big, because I certainly don't go home, and so it is, as you say, just thinking about, what can I do? And if it's safe to join something else that's non-conformative, like a group or a community, then let's do that. But don't be afraid to do it. Don't let fear stop you. I mean, fear, I face fear every day. Number one, with my life of, being in these crappy motels, or taking buses at 1 o'clock in the morning from one state to another. But it's, sorry, I completely lost my chain of thought. Non-conformity.
It's okay, because so I've got another question.
Okay, yeah.
Remember that train of thought. We'll jump onto that train.
Yeah.
Or bus, whatever
Yeah.
form of transportation you are taking most. So you're talking about, fear and self-doubt. Now that's a lot of what you support people with, who you work with, but you have it yourself. You clearly, we all do. And yet you, based on what your journey has been and continues to be, you take that head on. Can you talk about how you do that? What does that actually look like or sound like in your head, what's that conversation like, so you can choose to live this big badass life and not be held back by fear and self-doubt?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. People often ask me that. And this journey that I'm on with the book, that literally is, I'm being guided by the universe. I can't sort of wrap it up any other way. I'd love to say there's a scientific formula. I'm being plugged in every night, and I mean, it's just giving me how to be alive, to do this life I'm living at the moment. But the fear thing is just, I just think, well, number one is really, what is the worst that can happen? I mean, I can be rejected, married, murdered, I mean, of course, there are lots of bad scenarios, but a lot of the time, if the fear is, say, for example, stripping off and jumping into the sea, and if that's really what I wanted to do in a day, then I would sort of, what's the worst that can happen? And, arrest and, and deportation. Yes, okay, that's that. But, it's, and I just think that my mum died too young. But the one thing she didn't do is she never regretted anything she did. And she was such an adventurer, and I'm getting chills talking about this, because this is what is, pushing me on to do what I'm doing today. But it really is, it is just pushing through and knowing you will survive. And this is where the self-belief comes in. I mean, I've survived a lot worse than, what I'm going through now, and I know I will do it. So it's just really believing in yourself that you can do it. And just saying, fuck fear. It's just not a way to live in this constant fear.
there are two things that I heard you say, other than fuck fear, which I really like. One is you were talking, you know, you were kind of joking that it'd be really great to be able to put a scientific formula together and share with you how that has plug into that, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing in my life. But based on what you said, I mean, you're plugging into something bigger than that, which is a higher calling. That people call God, universe, whatever you want to call that higher energy, that source power. And as a result of doing that, you're living the value of having found your purpose. And I think that for me has been, and I'm curious to know what you think. For me, that's been the value in doing the inner work that I started doing 4 years ago. Because then when you know with certainty that you are doing the right, you know why you are here on this earth, then when you face the obstacles and the fear and the self-doubt, it's still hard as hell. But it's like, well, I know why I have to push through. And what are your thoughts on?
Yes, I mean, I think that's where we do struggle as people. And I do, yes, as you say, it keeps you in fear. If you really don't know your purpose or who you are. So I think, yes, that's fundamental. And it's great that you have found that, because still people struggle at the age of, 60, 70. And that's where it is a lot of fear-based. I kind of know why I'm here, and I am here to inspire people, but through what medium, I'm not sure. That's where I'm, still finding my feet after 2 years. When I embarked on the coaching world, I didn't want to just do one-to-one. That wasn't enough for me. I wanted to reach a bigger audience. And so kind of that's why I'm writing this book now. It's so I'm going to reach a huge audience. And then of course the book is going to be a bestseller. And then of course it's going to be made into a movie. So therefore it's going to be huge.
And then from there, that's where your acting career is going to take off, because you are going to play the main character, right? So
exactly.
So
nobody can be me.
And then you'll have speaking gigs where you'll be inspiring others. Yeah, so I can see the trajectory here.
Exactly. You know where my mind's going, and it's just, I mean, people sort of, oh no, you can't, you're not going to make any money of a book, and it's not going to be sold as a movie, and all this. And I'm going, I really don't want to hear your fears, because whenever anybody puts you down, or whenever anybody negatively says anything, it's only their shit. Just remember that. It's, and you sit there and you actually think, wow, I'm glad that, I recognize that, because I don't take it personally. You've got healings, they've got healing to do, I think that's really important, fundamental. Whenever you're facing fear, if anybody says anything negative, it's their shit, not yours, and this is where we have to stand out and be unique, and be proud and be confident to be unique, and just say, I don't really care what other people think. Of course, we've got to think of morals, and we don't want to hurt anybody. Your intention of doing this has to be good and pure and out of love. Certainly don't do things out of fear. So yeah, so that's kind of where my life is going. So, but who knew, 18 months ago when I started on this journey, that this is where I would be going, or what I'm going to be doing. But if the universe sends me on a different path tomorrow, flying off to the moon as my astronaut, then so be it. I'm kind of really being guided by the universe at the moment.
I think that's extremely, extremely powerful. And then things do work out somehow, which we can't anticipate, and we can only connect the dots when we look backwards, right? It all makes sense when we can look backwards. You've mentioned the book a few times. What can you tell us about the book? what you at a point where you're willing to sort of share? 'Cause I'm not sure where on the writing journey you're at, but can you give us a little more insight into it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's going to be launched in December. So I have 6 weeks to go before it's going off to my editor. But it's basically, so as I mentioned, back in 1958, my mum was sitting in Huddersfield, a little tiny town up north, saying there has to be more to life. And she was a stenographer, which is a typist. And so she jumps on a sailboat and sails to Canada. So she spends some time in Toronto as a stenographer again, and then decides, yeah, still not enough for life. So she then goes to Banff and spends a couple of months being a housekeeper at the Banff Springs Hotel.
Wow.
Where she meets 2 other people who are like-minded and adventurous, and they all decided to go buy these backpacks and hitchhike from Canada down to Mexico with a few dollars in their pockets, and a blank page of adventure and of life, and she diarized her adventures, and she also kept scrapbooks of everything, so it was time I told her story, and so that's what I'm doing. But what I'm doing is it's kind of a sliding doors. So I'm sort of writing her side, but then I'm writing my side too. And so 61 years later, literally to the day, because she left Canada on the 24th of September. So September, October, and November, which was her traveling, which is what I've done, which I didn't know until this is all synchronicities with the universe, that I am here around the same time as her. But I'm doing it slightly different. I'm not hitching, obviously. I am using buses.
I am happy to hear that.
Yeah, I know, even though I can tell you right now that it's so tempting just to stick out your thumb, because getting around the States on public transport is not easy at all. I mean, this is why people have cars. Buses only come every half an hour, and I seem to just miss them. So I stand there in the heat, waiting for the next bus. And so you can't get anywhere quick. You can't get anywhere glamorous, because when you're waiting, you start sweating, your hair sticks, your makeup starts running, so you can't get anywhere glamorous. And using buses to get around as well, not using a car or anything, because I can't afford to. I haven't got that kind of money. And just so writing about my own adventures as well. So this book it's called There's Always a Hitch. And so it's a play on words with her saying they always got a ride, plus also there was always things that went wrong as well. But some of the stories that she told me were just incredible. I mean, just one very quick one, which is my favorite story ever. I actually was very glad that I traveled with my mum. We had a great relationship, and we were actually, funny enough, 13 years to the day, back in October 2006, we were here in the States together in Las Vegas. And again, I didn't know this, in Las Vegas and San Francisco. And we took a helicopter ride to the Grand Canyon for a sunset picnic. And we were sitting there, and she was regaling the story to everybody. She had sort of captured the picnic table that was sort of sitting there, and she was saying that when they were in the Grand Canyon, they decided to sleep out one night, and so they found a bench, so 2 of them underneath and 1 on top. And then when they woke up in the morning, they woke up to the semicircle of about 20 Red Indians sitting there, cross-legged, just sitting watching them. And after sleeping on the hard floor, she's like cranking, but trying to do it as quietly as possible, gathering her stuff, and then sort of like tiptoeing off. And these guys didn't even flinch, and they just watched. And she said, we didn't know who was more worried, scared of who, them of us or us of them. But I mean, it's just a fascinating story. I mean, you know, and just one that I love telling people, because that's kind of experience that is just incredible.
It truly is. And what a special book this is going to be. I can't wait to buy it. I can't wait. I will be buying 2, and I'll be gifting one to a listener. Somehow, I don't know how to figure out how I'm going to gift that.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited to be able to experience, you know, your experience, your mother's experience through your words and your humor. I think it'll be quite something. What is it that you're hoping readers will feel and take away from the experience of reading your book?
Again, inspired to become your own adventurer, whether you know, it's just the freedom from your everyday life, just something small, or quitting and doing something really random, or, you know, just be an adventurer. Really, I mean, that cliche story of life is too short. I mean, it really is. I mean, time goes so slow when we're bored. You know, when you know, when we're doing something really amazing, you know, it just flies by. But that's who makes us as a person. Our stories, our adventures, our experiences. You know, I always think life experience is the best teacher. Yeah, so that's basically what it's all about, is to just inspire people to get out there and experience.
I love it. And so, in wrapping up, if you can believe we've already been chatting for an hour. I know. What is the best way for people to find you, to get more information about the book for when it's coming out, information about you and what you offer and services you offer? So if they think, I need more of this woman in my life to help me, where should they go?
Okay, I have a website for my Defiance coaching, which is Sophfree.com, and I have a few sort of coaching packages there. My book will be, I'm going to self-publish, and so it will be available on a lot of different platforms. There's always a hitch, but I am on Facebook, both Sophfree, and also There's Always a Hitch has a Facebook and Instagram at HitchGirls3. But I have actually also set up a GoFundMe page to help me finish the journey, which is under Sophie Sherwin. It's traveling around the US is so expensive, however cheaply you can try and do it. And I've been to many cities, many states, and I've got a few more to go. So I'm just helping people, asking people to help out, support in any way they can. But yes, the book will obviously be launched as well in December. So
I will include those links in the show notes, so those listening don't have to like scramble. So get all that done. And Sophie, thank you so much for sharing your time, your humor, and your stories with me and my listening audience today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for listening. And you know, this is my voice. I'm now uninvisible.
You are now uninvisible. Well,
I am.
And I want to thank all of you, as always, my loyal listeners, and remind you that information about my show and my guests, like Sophie today, can be found at louisehreed.com. A big shout out to 2 men in my life who are important that make this show possible: Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network, and always my love, Jay Andrews. In closing, I'm going to leave you with a couple of statements that I heard from Sophie today that I thought were so powerful. She said, follow your gut, not the crowd. She said, life is too short, be an adventurer. And my favorite, I think, fuck fear, it's no way to live. So until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you an awesome day. Thanks, friends. Goodbye.